Hello, my name is Allison Forrest, and I'm a senior at the University of Houston, Victoria, where I'm currently getting my bachelor's degree in computer science and mathematics. Right now, I'm in a senior project course where I'm working on an application called the Workplace Management Mobile Application. And generally, this application helps to manage workplace scheduling, workplace messaging, and workplace payroll access for employees. So far on the project, I'm well into the development phase. Design is completed, and I've ran into several problems recently that I'm going to go over first. So, first of all, my first major issue happened on the 26th of May. The power tripped in my room while I was working on the project. So, because I had Android Studio open working on the XML and HTML files when the power tripped, um, I actually had a lot of problems reopening Android Studio. So I had to re-download a lot of the required files for Android Studio, which caused the HTML and XML files to become corrupted, and I could not save them. So I had to start from scratch on these files in development. This wasn't all bad because I got a second chance to kind of redesign them, look over how I had originally planned them out, and kind of redo what I had done previously. The next problem that I ran into was with Apache Cordova that I was using to design the application. Um, Specifically, I was having problems with Gradle that is a required software for Apache Cordova. I was having problems getting Gradle to work. I had to keep re-downloading files and moving them around in my computer, which caused me to lose several XML and HTML files as well. So when the power tripped on the 26th, I decided to completely switch over to Android Studio since I had to start over on several of my files anyway. And the switch has been for the better. I've found that Android Studio is a lot easier to use. Right? So the first thing that's mainly been completed is going to be the database. Both the design and the development have been completed. And this is kind of an overview of the database that I'm going to go into detail about. So first off, right here in the middle, we have the business table. And this is just going to keep track of the businesses that are logged in the system through the app. It gives them a unique business ID and, of course, the name that is given by whoever is registering the business. Over here in the top left, we have the business hours. And this is just going to be tracking the operating hours for a particular business on a particular day. And this is going to be entered by the manager of the business when it's being registered, and it can also be changed later when the manager chooses to change it. And of course, it has a particular variable here called the effective date. So the business hours might not change exactly when you enter them. So of course, there's an effective date that shows when that business hour becomes effective. Next, we have the users table here, and this is just going to track both the employees and managers for each business, and they're given a user ID alongside their employee ID and business ID. And then branching off of the users table, over here we have the time away requests, which is just going to track every request that an employee sends to a manager or a higher up to have time away. And of course, it tracks whether it's been approved or not. Next, branching off the users table, we have the availabilities, and this is tracked by user, very similarly to how the business hours are tracked. It's given a day, start and end time, and an effective date. Next, branching off the users table, we have the earnings, and this is going to be a very simple table. Simply has the earning ID and the hours logged based on the shifts over here, right? And then additionally, branching off the users table, we have shifts, which is also tracked very similarly to availabilities and business hours, and it's tracked by user ID. Right? And then finally, over in this section in the bottom left, we have the chat system. And the chat system's primarily going to be based on the chats table down here that have a chat ID. And each chat has chat messages that each have a unique ID, a chat ID that they're assigned to, and a sender, which is going to come from this chat users table. And this chat users table is determined by the user ID and which the chat ID that the user is in. So each chat has specific users that are part of that chat and has specific messages that are sent to that chat. So that's just kind of an overview of the database that I've been using as a backend to my application. Right? So the next thing that I set up was the XAMPP server, and the setup has been completed. It was very easy to download and manage, um, and there was a lot of documentation online that I was able to look up and use when I ran into small problems. And overall, it was a very easy experience to set up the server. So now my database has been attached to the application that I've begun developing, and that's what I'll get into next. Is the application itself. The user management and functions are all in progress right now. All right. So user management itself has been completed. Managers, employees, and businesses can all be registered. Generally, that looks like a registration page that branches off from the login page. And managers and employees will register separately, where employees simply register under their business. Managers are registering both themselves and their business um, through the app. And then, of course, constraints exist both in the XML and the PHP files that make sure a business cannot be registered incorrectly and that it cannot be registered twice. Same goes for employees, right? And additionally, the user functions are in progress. So as I mentioned earlier, I already have the login and the registration complete. And then account management, where you can view account details and such, changing like business hours for a manager or something, have already been complete. And the next goals that I'm going to be focusing on primarily are messaging, scheduling, availability, and time away. And then GUI, of course, the graphical user interface will come much later after these things have been completed. So that's an overview of the project so far. Thank you for listening.